Hello and welcome to the 10th video in this series for beginners programming Python 3. In this video we're going to take our first look at something called lists in Python. Lists are a sequence type, much like a string. The documentation for them, like everything else, is inside the standard library documentation under sequence types. And if you remember with a string, if I go down to the operations here, we could do various operations with our string with the indexing, or we can also do a similar thing with lists. But the difference between a list and the string is that the string just contains text characters. A list can contain anything we like. So I want to start taking a look at the lists then using the Python interpreter. So let's go in there. And now I'm going to declare a list. With the square parentheses here, I've said that, I've written names to create a new variable, and I've said that then is an empty list. The square parentheses tell the Python interpreter that is a list. If I have a look at the type of names, it tells me that the type is list. Let's make a new list already with some values inside. And now if I print my names to the console, I get my list, which is Fred, John, 43, 75 and Tom. And what you'll notice there, the interesting thing is we've got different types inside our lists. We can have mixed types of things inside our list. It's up to us to know what is where inside our lists. We can access just as we did with strings, we can access objects using or items on our list using indexing, just the same as strings. I won't spend too much time because we were fairly thorough with that in strings, but let's say I want the second item in our list. That would of course be index 1. You'll remember from the strings video, so everything starts at index 0, and I use the same syntax there, the square brackets with the number inside. I can also use the from and to syntax, which you'll remember. So let's do index 1 to up to, but not including index 4, so I get the John 43 and the 45. And I can also use a minus syntax there, so I could say -1 for the last element, -2 for the second to last element, and so on. Another good thing about lists is, let's say I go off the list, so I've got 5 elements here, so that means index is 0 to 4, so I try to access something at index 5 which doesn't exist, I get an index error. So Python has bounds checking inside and will throw an error if you try to access something that's outside the actual list itself, and like in C maybe, where you could end up with a blue screen and a memory error, or changing another variable or something without realizing inside the program. So Python has built-in bounds checking here for making sure you don't go outside your list. And we can use our indexing to modify the values of whatever is stored at a particular point in the list. So let's say I want to change the name John. I know John is at index 1, so at index 1 I'll give that a new value and give that now James. And now if I print names to the screen, John has changed for James. And it doesn't really matter about the types there. I can change this value now, let's say, to something else. I'll change this to the number 33. Print names again, and now I have the number 33 inside there as well. It simply replaced what was there with something else. Once I've created my list, I can also add things to my list using something called append. An append will add then an item to the end of the list. So if I type names append, and inside the brackets here I'll put the value of what I want to append. I'll just call this doe. Printing names now gives me doe at the end of the list. I can also use insert to add an item at a specific position in the list. So if I do names.insert, now I can enter the index number of where I'd like to insert something. Let's say I want to enter something at index 2, and I'm going to enter the number 99, and now print names. You'll see that now at index, the 43 was at index 2, so Fred is 0, 33 is 1, 43 is 2, but now I've inserted the 99 at the index 2, and the rest of the items have been shifted one position. So we can use append to add to our list, and we can use insert to insert a specific index. To remove items, there are a number of ways of doing this. We can use del for delete from a list, and with delete we can give in the particular index we want to delete an item from. So I can say del and then names, and let's say I'll remove the item at position 1, which is the 33, and now reprint names, and now the 33 has disappeared. What I can also do, I can use something really useful called pop. What pop does is it removes the last item from the list but returns that item as well. And why would that be useful? It may be that you want to extract something from a list but then do something with it before you then discard it. The del function has just, or the del operator has just simply removed it from the list. So how does it work then with pop? Let's say we want to remove the 75 from our list. So I'll make a new variable, call it num, and I'll say that's equal to names, pop, and then I need the index of the 75, which is 3. And now if I look at the names list, we see the 75 has disappeared, and if I look at num, it has the value 75. If again I just took num just for case in point here and didn't put an index in the pop, num will now be the last item that was on the list, which is now dough. Names now has Fred, 99, 43, and Tom. We can also use something else called a remove function, and there we can specify inside the brackets for the remove the value that we want to remove from our list. So if I do names, remove, and then 43, remove will look for the 43, and if it's there, then remove it from names. If I put something in that doesn't exist, let's say 100, I get a value error, and we've seen that in the previous video because that particular value is not existing in the list. So you can see that lists are really flexible, and they allow you to build and remove and shrink collections, sequences of lots and lots of different items. And they're one of the most fundamental things you'll see in programs. So let's just write a tiny little program to demonstrate maybe the use of a list. I'm in Notepad here as usual. I'm going to write a script and assume you're aware of how to do that. I'm going to declare a new variable called a shopping list, and then I'm going to say while true. Now, this is not the best program in the world, but it's just to make a little demonstration. Let's let the user build up a shopping list. I'm going to say enter an item on your shopping list and store the user input then in a variable. And the first thing I want to do is check whether the user input is a queue. If it is, we'll break. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll add to our list the user input. So we'll use the append, and inside the brackets of append then we'll put our user input, and we'll have then our shopping list growing with the user's input. Then the last thing I'd like to do is I would like to do a for loop and say for item in and then our shopping list. And what this will do now is it'll iterate through every item in our list, and then the variable item will have the value of each of the values in our list in turn. And that will then print our shopping list to the screen. Just before there, I'll enter another line and actually just print the final shopping list, so you can see the list in all its glory before the loop actually runs, and we can see how that works. So a simple little program here. Let's give that a go. I'll just exit the interpreter and clear the screen. And one of the things I've just realized, of course, which you've probably been shouting whilst watching the video, is I haven't put the input around here. I've just put the enter an item for your shopping list here, which, if I'm brutally honest, I quickly ran the program and got stuck in an infinite loop wondering why. Well, the reason was I wasn't actually asking for any input here. So after that modification, let's just quickly run the program again then. And okay, now we get asked for an item in the shopping list, so I'll just put salad and then something else. I'll put sugar and then Q to quit. And then we get our final shopping list printed here, which is in the square brackets. It's a list. And then you can see here that the for loop has looped through the two items on our list. So we're able to dynamically, using the user input, then build ourselves a list. Okay then, so that's the first introduction to lists. Very powerful collection or sequence type that's very often used inside Python. Any comments or problems, feel free please to leave one below the video. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and see you in the next one.